Hey guys! So today we're going to talk about breathing and support, two things that are very important when you discuss flute playing. Um, First thing you need to understand is kind of how the breathing mechanism as a human works. So to do this, I want you to picture a fire stoker, a bellows, if you know what that is. Has two paddles with handles and then kind of an accordion type thing in the middle, and then a long tube at the top where the air comes out, and you use that to reawaken coals in a fire. Okay? So that little metal part at the end there, where the air comes out, that's kind of like your esophagus and your trachea, your throat area there, and your mouth. Okay? And that all leads down to the bellows part, which is the paddles on either side of that accordion, and that's how kind of your torso works when you breathe. So as you breathe in, they expand to hold that, right? And then you push to make that accordion contract and push the air out. Likewise, your body does the same thing. So when you breathe in, you expand all the way around here. And using those abdominal muscles and your intercostal muscles in your rib cage and your back muscles, you slowly compress that area, which raises, which causes your diaphragm to raise, which causes you to breathe. Now, if someone told you to breathe from, if you ever heard somebody tell you to breathe from your diaphragm, what they're really saying is breathe from your stomach, because your diaphragm is a it's not a voluntary muscle. It's an involuntary muscle. It happens when you breathe, whether you think about it or not, which is good, because if you had to think about breathing all the time, you'd be in trouble, right? So, so what happens is your diaphragm, when you breathe out, comes up. When you breathe in, it goes down, which is why you get a little bit fatter when you breathe in. Because think about it, you have that muscle coming down and compressing all of your organs out to make them flat, right? And then when you breathe out, they go back to where they're supposed to be. Alright, so breathing for the flute. The most important thing to know is that you have to breathe low. Low to middle is what we like to say. And that is more important than taking a big breath, because I guarantee if you breathe this way, you'll take a big breath, alright? So a lot of times when people tell you to take a big breath, the thing you think to do is, I'll turn this way, right? You want to expand your chest and make it really big, but really what you're doing is you're making everything tense and nothing can come out. You feel like you have a lot of air, but really you don't. So what we encourage you to do is to breathe low and middle. Breathe all around here. Imagine all of this expanding. That includes your back, which for me really helps. When someone told me that imagine your back expanding, that helped me a lot more than just imagine this part of me expanding. Because you can do that without getting a big breath. So imagine all of this expanding out. It's okay if you look a little fat. It's okay. Alright? So what you want to do, and I'll lean forward, which you shouldn't do. You should always sit up straight. But in order for you to see really well, I'll lean forward a little bit. And what you do is you see how everything got bigger there? And you'll notice that I fill up, even breathing low, I fill up lower first and then higher. So there should be different levels of where you breathe. You can eventually get to the point where you should fill up this part too, but always make sure that you fill bottom and middle first before you fill up here. And make sure that when you do fill up here, you're not getting tense. It should be an expansion, not a whatever that is. Right? So you go. Another thing to think about in order to get that breath that you want. Sorry, I have a piece of loose skin. There we go. In order to get that breath you want is if you were to take the first knuckle of your hand and make that the distance between your lips, you'll get a really deep, hollow sound when you breathe in, like so. Instead of what a lot of people get, which is you want that low sound. Alright, so outward breathing. Now it's hard to talk about breathing out without talking about support first. So support is using those muscles we talked about. Your abdominal muscles, your intercostal muscles, and your lower back to really support your breathing out. So, but what I mean by support is when you breathe in and you have that expansion, and then you want to breathe out, but you want to maintain that expansion as long as you can. See how my torso didn't compress until I got almost all the way out of air? That's what you want. You want to hold on and kind of control that air as much as you can. As flute players, we don't have a lot of resistance from our instrument, so that means that we have to really have good control on how much air we let out at what time. Unlike other instruments like the oboe or the tuba or just about anything else, where your breathing is kind of mitigated by how much your instrument is pushing against you, as our air goes across, cutting our tone hole rather than directly into it. Alright? Okay, so here's some breathing exercises that I enjoy, that I want you to try. Now it's important to note that when you're doing these breathing exercises for the first time, you should probably remain sitting. You're likely to get a little lightheaded because you're not used to breathing this way, and it's kind of a new thing. You will eventually become more comfortable with it if you practice, I promise. The best thing to do is take your metronome and set it quarter note equals 80. If you're brand new, as you get better at it, quarter note equals 60 is good, and you can go lower than that as you feel more comfortable with your breathing, or you can add on measures if you feel more comfortable with it and you want to test yourself, okay? Now, a lot of people will say 4 in, 4 out, 4 in, 8 out type thing. It's more realistic to do quicker breaths in, but to start with, you can certainly start with 4 in, okay? So what you want to do is, and I'll collect the tempo, in for 4, out for 4. And I would encourage doing that 3 times. And then maybe changing it up a little bit. So maybe in for 2, out for 4. Then maybe in for 1, out for 4. And then maybe adding on to the amount you breathe out. So maybe in for 4, out for 8. And so on and so forth. Once again, make sure that if you feel lightheaded or dizzy, please stop. Take a moment to regain your bearings. Maybe just stop with breathing exercises for the day and move on to the next part of your warm-up and come back and see if you can make it further the next day. Okay? Another good breathing exercise is to imagine yourself trying to blow a paper airplane across the room. So if you breathe in, that kind of gives you the power that you need to play the flute. Likewise, for embouchure, which we're going to talk about a little bit, but there will be another video about it, embouchure when breathing. So it's important that you remember that while you can move your mouth to breathe in, when you breathe out, you have to keep thinking about the embouchure you're making with your lips, your facial muscles, and your tongue. So when you breathe in, but then to breathe out, you have to think up. So also poo or poo, puh or poo works really good. So to maintain that embouchure and get you feeling what that's going to be like when you're playing. Alright? Okay, let's do a couple of breathing exercises and support exercises with the flute. So, I'm going to play one note without support and with a high breath to give you a sound, to give you kind of an idea what that'll sound like. So, notice how high my breath was? You could really hear it. Also, notice how airy the sound and tone of that note was. Now I'll play you one with a good breath and good support. Notice how much rounder and full that sound was, and that you didn't get the sound when I breathed in. Both of these are because I was breathing correctly and using support. Now I'll give you a view of what I'm doing down here while I'm playing. Okay? So here's the first one. Right? And option 2.